Toronto FC were back in action this week, and well, they mostly left us with a lot more questions than answers. And after another loss, this time to Orlando City SC, we'll try to sort through some of those questions. Probably ask more of our own on today's episode of Wake Red Weekly, presented by Footy Talks. My name is Mitchell Tierney, and in about 15 minutes or so, we'll be joined by Michael Leach of 680 News to get his take on the latest happenings around the club. But before then, a rare episode without Michael Singh. Instead, it's just me and Jeffery P. Nesker and his beer. Is that?
That's not. Oh my God, that is not a beer. This is in honor of a certain game that's going to be played at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I may start inventing my own language because there's about an army's worth of sugar in this glass of Iron Brew. But you buried the lead again. You got the Superman curl going. Someone got himself a haircut since the last time I saw him. It's looking nice. It's making me very jealous of my COVID salad. But anyway.
Well, thank you, sir. If you needed anything, it wasn't more sugar. So this episode might be an interesting one again. But let's get them into you. The comments are saying both the Iron Brew.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's start with TFC and, of course, their loss to Orlando, and an absolutely wild game. I mean, start out in shambles, and I think we were all worried that things were really going to go off the rails. After that, they were able to claw back, and I actually thought through the middle part of that game, especially, I thought there was actually some good signs of maybe some progress from the team. But at this point of the season, ultimately another loss, which is concerning, certainly. What were your thoughts now that you've had a couple of days to kind of process what went on in that
game? I've had a couple of days to forget all about it, so now I have to remember.
Fair enough.
It's funny. We went back to like a hybrid Vanny system, and we conceded a goal in the first minute, which is very, very, very last phases of the Vanny epoch in TFC. It felt like 2 steps forward, 18 steps back. To be honest, that cue was a heartbreaker. I mean, we've been singing his praises, and something. Remember when Seba wrote that article about how he knew they were going to lose the 2016 MLS Cup? Like, he just had a feeling. Hindsight is always 20/20, but he just had a feeling. And I think I'm going to paraphrase him, but I think he said he walked into that locker room and he looked at all the other faces, and it just reinforced his belief that this wasn't going to be their year. Well, I saw Q in the lead up to the game, like they were tight on his face. I've never seen him look less confident ever, and I had a feeling that something bad was in the works. Was that just rust? I mean, or is there something more insidious at play?
I think so. I mean, we'd have to see him for more than a game to know whether
exactly.
It was rust or not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We can't really determine more than one game. I think it's the same thing we've been saying a lot of the season in terms of putting players into positions to succeed. And obviously he's playing his proper position. We didn't.
He only has one job.
So it's not in that sense, but obviously he came into this year expecting to at least compete for the starter's role, and then when he doesn't get that opportunity and he hasn't played yet, and it doesn't seem to make sense why he hasn't played yet, then that's, like you said, speaks to the confidence aspect. And again, when you allow a goal that quickly into the game, and you're definitely partially at fault for it, then things snowball as they did. And I think that's the one thing you can say about this match, that again, it's not a positive for Toronto FC because internal mistakes are obviously a major issue, but at the very least, they can. This is one of those games where they can say they beat themselves a little bit, because every single Orlando goal was off of a pretty brutal Toronto FC mistake, whether that was Westberg or Auro had a bit of a howler as well, returning to his natural position at fullback. So I think at least in that aspect, the overall performance was definitely a little bit better, but there's still a lot of concerning things that, again,
I'm glad you went there, because that seems to be the narrative, and that these were individual mistakes as opposed to systemic failures, right? That seems to be what's going around, and I'm wondering if that's not if there's more gray to it, if it's not as binary as that, right? Like obviously to the eye test, it looked like individual mistakes. I wonder where's that margin, right? Like where's the margin between individual mistakes and the good old systemic failures, right? Like if it's going to look like an individual mistake if they don't know what they're doing because of systemic failures. So I'm wondering where that magic line is, because it seems to be like I'm talking cyclically, but that's been the excuse. And if you hit our forums, you'll see this argument sort of taking place in various guises, right? Like people are saying nothing's changed, and then other people are saying, whoa, there's been incremental improvements. This was a big step forward. I'm not sure what anymore. I mean, they still lost, right? Like,
yeah,
at the end of the day,
again,
you still lose. Yeah.
I think you make a good point there, and the one interesting thing, of course, is like you said, this was as close to a Vanny system as we've seen all year in terms of the personnel involved, where they were playing. I mean, I can't think of a player who was playing particularly out of position during that game, which is something we've been harping on forever from the start of the season. So that's where you start to get, I mean, again, it's good and bad. It's good that it seems like Armas is learning a little bit and putting guys in, again, better positions, but it's concerning that they still aren't picking up results when this team is looking closer to what,
I mean,
should look like.
Not to call Yvonne out, but here's a comment he just threw in, right? Is this recency bias? Like the best game we've played this year? I don't want to bring up Leon again, like everybody in the universe, but I think that beats Leon beats that game. What was the game where we were second half? We were getting destroyed, and then we came back in the second half and just made everybody's. I think it was Columbus. It might have been. Well, we've only won once, so whichever one it was the game that I liked. So, I can't help but not see that as recency bias, right? Like, it can't be the best game we played because, here's my theory, and you sort of went there. Because it was so Vanny, because they came back in such a Vanny style, those individual mistakes were systemic failures. Whoa, did I just blow everybody's mind? Because too often people didn't know what the hell they were doing, right? They were like, you could see the gears turning, like, do I press now or do I hold on to the ball and possess now, right? Because they are, as much as I don't like talking in binary absolutes, they are kind of mutually exclusive. Like one system is hot potato, the other one is pass them into oblivion. So I don't know. I mean, did you see that disconnect? Because I sure did. On the I think it was on the Oro giveaway that led to the last goal, right? Like there was not a lot of tracking back, but there was but I mean it wasn't ball watching. It just felt like indecision, and then a team, capitalized on a counterattack.
Yeah, I mean, there's the other factor, which of course they're coming out of the international break as well, and I think we can definitely say that factored into both teams because
exactly, it factored into both teams. I'm so sick of but this and but that and but this. I know. I mean, they're all valid excuses, but
I'm not saying that completely. I just wanted to bring up that was
at least fair is fair.
At least like from a eye test standpoint, that was maybe one of the worst games of the year in terms of just the quality that was on display because both teams were just looked terrible throughout that game.
Well, compared to the soccer we've been watching,
right? Yeah, between the Euros,
they're not going to look. Yeah, they're not going to look very good. They can't do, Kevin De Bruyne things. So, but hold on, Ivan. I see your comment there. We'll address it in due time. I mean, before I forget, you raised an interesting point in the chat. You raised, hey, why are there no fans there? And we were all quick to correct you. TFC requested there be no fans there because the last time we tried that, there were a bunch of Orlando fans and passerby, and they were aggressively anti-TFC. And you said it doesn't matter. A hostile crowd's better than no crowd at all. What has your opinion changed, or do you still?
No,
really.
I mean, I've watched too many games behind closed doors this year, and it's just not the same, right? I think anytime you can allow fans into buildings right now, you should. And again, it would have been a hostile atmosphere, and I know Toronto FC need results, but like from the long-term perspective, these are good games to get under your belt where you're playing in tough atmospheres like that. Like again, this is the same mentality thing we've been talking about for a bunch of different stuff where it's like, at some point you need to be able to win these games. So why create all of these scenarios for yourself where again you're hiding injuries, you're doing all of these different things.
Yeah. I mean, it's like homeschooling your kid, right, or going to private school. Eventually, they got to find out that there's a big bad world out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it does feel like that. But I'm of the mind. Listen, is it an advantage to have if they have fans in there and the game goes exactly the same as it went, right? Q's confidence is destroyed, right? It's not like it's probably not great right now, but to have people jump down his throat and heckle him, it's his first start of the season, gives up that goal in record time, and then they've got the fans basically telling him that he's crap. I don't know. I think him and the Haitian goalkeeper on the second Canada game are going to a support group together to figure out their feelings.
With
so
Loris Karius,
yeah, exactly. Well, he's leading the group.
Right, you're right.
Gaffs Anonymous. But yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, enough's enough. It's almost like you've been given the opportunity to say no fans, so you take it without thinking, and then you don't actually think about how it could be good in some respects because listen, I'm having a tough time. People are going out all the time and I'm still in like I can go out now mode, right? Like, so TFC is going to reach that brick wall where we're suddenly back at normal, and this could be doing a disservice to themselves, like consistently like slowing that process to getting back to fans, whether they're aggressively anti-TFC or for TFC. If we've learned anything by this reopening plan, it's going to hit quick. It's not going to be stifled. And I think TFC's got to start thinking in those terms as opposed to this idea of competitive advantages and no fans in the stands and stuff like that. I think that's I think that the bell is tolling for that mentality.
Well, the one thing I wanted to say, and this is kind of unrelated, but I give Q's mental fortitude a little more credit. Like, this is a veteran. We've seen him make some pretty awful errors in the past and bounce back in due time. So again, it remains to be seen, and we'll see if he gets into one of the two games this week. But I don't think it's curtains for him. Certainly, I think we could see him bounce back and be fine in the following games.
Yeah, that's one of my questions for Mike when he arrives, actually. So yeah. Next up, Pozuelo. I mean, what can we say? What can we say about this guy?
I mean, you said this, and I think this is almost fair. Was he almost put in a perfect performance, and again, they still couldn't get the win. Like, he was fantastic. There was so many chances. The Dwyer chance at the end, obviously both goals. Like, they are a different team with him in the lineup, and it was really exciting to see what he can do again, and offensively again. That's one of the best games they've had all year, even if the defense undermined that and those individual mistakes. But
that's our TFC.
Exactly. You can start to see like everyone looks better with him in the lineup. Like Io, Richie gets more service,
better and worse because they're missing those sitters, right? Like, when does that start to connect? I mean, that Dwyer goal was on a plate, right?
Yeah.
And so, we can complain about maybe he should have come on when they brought on Mullins instead, give him more of a run out. I think it was one of our favorite commenters on the board said, we can be sure that respiratory wise he's probably fit, but his knee's probably a mess. Maybe 15 minutes is all he's good for at this point. We don't know. We can speculate. Certainly, a lot of us were like, you brought. I mean, I wasn't. I'm never mad when they bring on Mullins, but but like certainly we can speculate. This is a guy who wants to score against his former team, and he's on the bench, and you need an attacking spark. He should be number one on your substitutions, 10 times out of 10. I don't know. We don't know the whole story. I mean, a TFC player being too injured to play longer than 15 minutes is sort of par for the course. So maybe we'll err on that side. But Paz makes the team go. Yeah. How many more games are we going to accept Paz playing out of his mind and the rest of our team not being able to finish chances? Do you know?
Considering their payroll, I don't think they can. Like, I think there's other guys who obviously have to step up as well, and there's really this was their last major excuse I think they could use, is that we didn't have last year's MVP.
I'm glad you said that, because I think in a knee-jerk flush, I tweeted out, I'm ready to put this let's wait until Paz shows up and is fully healthy debate to bed. It might have been gun jumping, but I'm
I think that was a little gun jumping.
Well,
this
just
was his
because
first start, but
yeah, but I mean, when like, you know, eventually the season's over and we're still playing wait and see, right? There has to be a line in the sand. There has to be a cutoff demarcation point. Ivan, again, bringing out the sauce. That was a game for Josie to be in. We actually had service for our strikers. Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah, that is an interesting and great point. Is Michael here? Actually, he seems to think he's here, but
no, I don't see him. Was that
Okay.
him? Yeah, just sent him the linky do.
Okay.
Ivan's got some stuff in here. I mean, the general consensus is that this was never an individual error thing. This is a tactical situation, at least on our comments right now. I think the truth is somewhere in between. I really do. And I think you were making allowances for that by saying, you know, they're all rusty. They're coming back from the international break. You can't expect them to play at their full potential with so much.
That was less a comment on Toronto FC specifically. That was more a comment on the general game.
Right. I didn't watch any other MLS's back games, so I'm not. I mean, I saw that last minute Golazo that pinged off the bar like 14 times for the Philly team. But,
Glesnes again.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of MLS. I wonder why. I mean, there's just so much soccer on, and it's so much better. Yeah. Is he? Mm-hmm.
I don't see him yet. But one more interesting thing that I thought came out of this week was Michael Bradley's comments, sort of on I guess what we've been talking about, people blaming the system too much and blaming Chris Armas and talking about how things like this take time, which obviously, you know, as we've mentioned, like how long do you go before it's been time, sort of, which is a question we'll continue to ask, I think, every week. Mm-hmm. The one thing I did want to bring up that I thought was kind of interesting was, and again, this does speak to the fact that it does take time for systems and stuff to get into place, and that's that Greg Vanney's 2015 team, through 8 games, had the same amount of losses as this Toronto FC team. They had 2 more wins, so they were slightly better positioned, but it is worth mentioning that they struggled a lot as well. Yeah, they also had Sebastian Giovinco.
Yeah, Sebastian Giovinco's that year. At 2015 Sebastian Giovinco. It's very important. Mm-hmm. And man, do I wish that 2015 Seba was 2018 Seba, because that would have been fun. But yeah, no. I mean, you know, recency bias is real, and it's a thing. Michael is here, so we can go.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Put your phone down. What, are you buying, an Arsenal jersey?
I finally figured out the technology.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice glamour shot background. This is very different than the last time we saw you.
I think the last time I was out on my deck. This is This is actually my wife's. She teaches Zumba fitness and yoga. So thanks to the pandemic, she's been doing all of it at home. So I am currently sitting in her gym space.
Nice. Wow. I'm sure I'm currently sitting at my wife's office, so I know what she frames out the TFC gack in the background when she talks actual business stuff. Let's get right to it, Mike. Let's talk some TFC. Mitch, you got first dibs.
Sure. I guess we'll start with the Orlando game. You know, that was as healthy as we've seen Toronto FC. They acknowledged as much. They had Pozuelo back in the lineup. Still didn't pick up a result. How concerned should everyone be? You know, again, that they couldn't get any points from that.
Well, very, because we're now basically a quarter of the way through the season, and at some point you become what your record indicates that you are. And right now, this is a 1-win team. Clearly not good enough. 5 points. They're on track for about 20, which won't get them anywhere near the playoffs. So, at some point, and I know they played very well, and actually I was on the the Omar Gonzalez Zoom session from the team just before coming on here. And he said it was some of the best football that they've played this season. And I don't disagree. I thought they looked very good in portions of that game. Even early, when they got down 2-0, I thought they were controlling parts of that game, had a lot of chances. Fortunately for them, they were able to get the 2 goals to get back before halftime. But then they can't see out at least the draw. And even a draw at this point for this team, I don't know is really good enough. They need to start winning games. But then to give away the late winner, there are problems here. And I know they played well, but the time for moral victories is up for this team. They have to win games or they're going to be in deep trouble. They won't make the playoffs if this continues.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting that Omar did the presser and spoke for the team today. That's a face we haven't seen since 2019. I can't remember the last time he did a presser. I'm really curious about that. What was his demeanor like? Did it feel like he was reading off cue cards, or was he, or did you also could you figure out his ulterior motive there? I guess.
No, listen, Omar is not the most how do I put it? He doesn't have a ton of energy in these sort of sessions. It's not.
Yeah, he's pretty zen.
He's a very sort of placid guy. So I don't think you don't get a whole lot from him, which may be why he doesn't do these sessions all that often.
Okay.
Basically he did say felt the team played well, some of their best football. There was some talk about the accommodations that they have down in Orlando in comparison to what they had last year in Hartford or East Hartford. He says it's much better, but I mean, it's no excuse. They're all looking forward to getting back to BMO Field, and it looks like there's some movement in the right direction with the federal government with regards to the border coming up July 6th. They start to loosen some of the restrictions. So there was some of that, some of the general talk about the team, talk about Nashville, what they expect from Nashville tomorrow, how they're a very organized team, but also like to get around the back and tend to score from wide areas. So just sort of a general sort of overview of things so far and what they have to do going forward.
Okay. And was he asked any specific Armas questions? Did he ever need to vouch for the coach? Okay.
No.
Because my follow-up question is this. And I'm glad that you're the guest for this, because it was, KJ and I discussed this when we had him on the show. And and the more gray matter I devote to it, Chris Armas and Greg Vanney are very different people. Greg Vanney has got an ease and a demeanor in front of the camera that Armas doesn't have. Now, that's not like, I'm not willing to put Armas over the coals because he's got a different personality than Greg Vanney, right? One of Greg's strengths was how articulate he was. It's almost like a double negative because we've never met Chris, right? Our entire interaction with this man is via Zoom interviews, right? So, I'm not sure what the question is here beyond just let's, compare
and contrast.
Well, are we being fair to Chris Armas? And can we be fair to Chris Armas, right? Like, obviously the team's not performing, and so it's going to put into sharp relief, his inadequacies in terms of communication, and it will be exacerbated by the Zoom situation, right? So, is it our job to now preach this from the mountaintop so that the pitchfork mob, bears this in mind while they call for his head, or it is all fair in love, war, and soccer, I guess?
Well, I think for Armas, there are a couple of things working against him here. And the Zoom thing you mentioned, we have not been able to really personally interact with him. We've not, been able to meet him and sort of see what he's like when the lights are off and the cameras are off. That was something that Greg did very well. Greg was very you're having a conversation with him as opposed to necessarily a media versus coach scrum. I find Chris comes across as maybe a little bit combative when it comes to
a little bit.
I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily the easiest one to get an answer out of either. The other thing that's working against him is the results. Mm-hmm. The results haven't been there.
Yeah.
So that puts him under a greater microscope right away. This is a team that from 2015 through to last year, it looked like with the first round exit to Nashville, who they face tomorrow night, they've had tremendous success, and perhaps we were a little bit more willing to overlook some things with Greg. Not that there was not that we had to overlook a lot, because I thought Greg did a tremendous job while he was here. It's very clear that this team seems to have lost its way and lost its identity a little bit now that Greg's gone. And Greg was such a big big part of the identity of this team. And this team doesn't seem to. We talk high press. It's all we talk about with Armas.
Yeah.
To the point that Michael Bradley said in his last availability, listen, it's not just about the high press. It's about more than that. It's about us making mistakes at bad times, giveaways in bad areas. You saw that with Westberg, on the second goal the other night.
Yep.
It's self-inflicted wounds. But this team is trying to figure out its identity. They haven't gotten the results, and that puts Armas in a position where he's behind the eight ball. So first, he's combative, which already sets a bad sort of tone with people such as myself, and I think the fans obviously see it too.
Yeah.
They watch these media availabilities, these media Zooms, and they go, "This guy is not necessarily easy to have a conversation with," I guess is the way to put it. And then you couple that with the results, and it sets him up in a position where people are coming with a bit of a negative view. And I think some of that goes back to even his hiring. When he was hired, I think there were a lot of people that looked at him and went, he's not the right man for the job. Now you couple the results in there, and it sort of is the evidence to show, the evidence to sort of back up the theory that he may not have been the right one for the job.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just to play devil's advocate, they haven't played in Toronto for 2 seasons. Do you know what I mean? Like they have no center, like this is a boardroom with spotty Wi-Fi, right? Like, where the light from the hot Florida sun is on my back, making me sweaty. I would be combative, right? Like it's not an air conditioned media center at BMO where they control everything, where the variables aren't eliminated. I feel like I need to scream that from the mountaintop, but at the same time I'm so disappointed, right? Like it's this weird dichotomy to be in because I'm angry and I see everything and it bothers me, but I'm also like oh no, Jeff, don't walk, don't go up that hill. You don't want to die on that hill because it's a ridiculous hill to die on. But man alive, like let's be specific here. That press conference, right? Like, there are rules to a press conference. Like, if you're going to get asked that Josie question over and over again, and you will, it's not considered, it's not bad form to just say the same thing over and over again, right? It's a game of chicken. Oh, you're going to ask me about Josie again? Here's my rehearsed line. It's absolute garbage platitudes, but here it is, because that's how pressers work. Like that's just the natural order of things. And I don't want to mention the Greg father's name, but he was so good at it that it was like you didn't even notice when he was gaslighting you. You know what I mean? Or when he was dragging you on. And it's really unfair.
There were points last year though where you could see
where you saw him break.
Where you saw him start to break from that. Yes, yeah,
absolutely. Mike caught him at a disadvantage, and we saw him get combative. We're not bronzing his baby shoes. Like he had difficulty, and this is all hindsight is 2020. But to me, I mean, when you've got all of this working against you, to fold your arms on the third answer and say, no, we're not talking about that anymore. I mean, that I can't abide by that. Just give us the platitudes again, right? And then walk away and we're fine.
Yeah, listen, to the first point about being away from BMO Field and not having played at home in over a year. Yes, that's all true. Michael Bradley also told us preseason that wasn't going to be an excuse. So if that's their mentality, then it can't be used as an excuse. And to their credit, they really haven't. And also you look at Montreal and Vancouver, at least Montreal. Like Montreal is, I know between 5th and like 10th is separated by a point, but they're right in there for a playoff spot, whereas TFC is laggering down at 5 points, looking 6 points up at other teams. They're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but they got to start putting some results together in a hurry because and they also need help. So they're going to have to beat some of those teams. Nashville is one of those teams that's right in that mix. So tomorrow night's game is only a quarter of the way through the season, but it's a big game because if they can get 3 points from that, they eat closer to that sort of playoff path and also hold Nashville off, because if Nashville wins that game, Nashville's 14 points, TFC's 5, and it starts to look too far down the road. As to Armas's that whole news conference that they called last week to address the Josie situation, they didn't really address it. Curtis
we
really
ended in the same place as where we started. Yeah, exactly. I sat there for an hour going, I don't feel like I've gotten anything out of this. I've got nothing to report. And that's the reality. They told us the situation would be resolved by the end of the break. I personally didn't think that it would be resolved, and I ended up being right because Josie's contract is very difficult to move. There aren't too many teams that are going to want to take on that contract, considering what he's done basically over the last year, and there's so many reasons why. It's nothing against Josie, but if you're going to sit there and take questions and call the news conference to talk about Josie, it was very clear that was what their plan was, then answer the questions. And even if it's just, we're looking for the best solution for all parties here. We want what's best for Josie. We want what's best for the club. We would be open to a solution that brings him back, even if that's not the truth. Of course not. Yeah.
Say that.
Platitudes. Yeah.
And frankly, Bradley was the only one that said that.
Yeah.
We didn't get anything else from Curtis and from Armas. And I don't mean to be super negative with them, but really I think the fans, when you're talking about a designated player who is not even permitted into your camp right now because he had a spat with the coach, I think fans want a few more answers.
Especially with the Zoom situation. I mean, you can't have it both ways. If we're all going to sit here and outline how little access we have to the club, then my God, don't waste the opportunity to communicate with us. Do you know what I mean? It was from space. Like, we don't get to see you very often, so make it count. You know,
exactly.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't like to be negative. I mean, I'm sure everyone watching this knows that all of this criticism comes from a place of love. You know, we're not here to burn the team down. But we are here to ask questions. Unfortunately, sometimes they're not going to be the ones that people would like us to ask. Mitch, you want to say?
Yeah, I have a question before Jeff goes on another Iron Brew rant there.
This stuff's amazing. What a drug.
Until he's fueled up. I guess just in general, like we've been talking on this show, and a lot of other places have been talking about giving Quentin Westberg a chance. That's not what you wanted to see in his first performance of the season, certainly. Where does that leave things with the goalkeeper situation? And do you think we see him again in one of the 2 games this week? Because we know we've seen Bono be given opportunities to bounce back after some tough mistakes of his own.
I know personally, if I was filling out the team sheet, I would put him on the team sheet again. I think you got to give him some minutes. And I know it was a rough start to the game. I think it was 2 goals within the first 8 minutes of the game. Well, one, the guy hasn't played a competitive game in something like 9 months. I think it was back last October or early November that he played. So it's a long time between games for him, and you can train all you want. There's a big difference between training and actually being in the game facing live bullets. And the mistake he made that cost them that goal, to me, was a sign of rust. But the team hung him out to dry. And I think they probably would have been down in that game, regardless of who was between the sticks. Because the first goal was, again, it was one of those self-inflicted wounds. You give it away in a bad spot, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. And 5-10 seconds later, the ball's in the back of your net. That's not necessarily on Westberg. That's just poor play from the 10 guys in front of him. Again, you can look at him on the second goal, and I'm sure he'd raise his arm on that. Bono's had to raise his arm a few times this season too. If it all boils down to the goalkeeper, and they've conceded too many goals this season, that's not just on goalkeeping. So it's not just Bono or Westberg. It's the structure in front of them. It's the way they're playing. They're putting themselves in positions where mistakes are deadly. And that's where it has to stop. The goalkeeper is the last line of defense. It has to be better in front of the goalkeeper. I would give Westberg another look for sure. That's not to say that Bono doesn't deserve more starts as well, but the whole situation with the goalkeeping to start this season, where we didn't see Westberg for the first 2 months of the season, and we're told that he was late arriving in camp. We don't know why. There were personal reasons. And listen, personal life is personal life, and they can and should keep some things away from fans and the media. I don't know what the situation was, but he was in the bench. Obviously, he was ready to play. I think he deserved a look before, week 8 of the season or week 9, whatever it was, the 8th game of the season. I think he deserved a look before that.
Yep. My follow-up question was, do you start him again on Wednesday? And you sort of answered that.
I would. I don't know whether Armas. I would. Yeah. I have a feeling Armas probably goes back to home,
which is fantastic. So I'm gonna roll on the improv. Summer transfer window. What's your target? What position does TFC need to address, and why is it center back?
Why is it center back?
Yeah.
Is why it's center back.
Yeah.
He simply hasn't been good enough, and Luke Singh has shown moments of brilliance, but he's also shown moments where he's, I wouldn't say out of his depth, but he's young and he'll make young mistakes. Center back is an issue because they just concede too many goals, and frankly, they're a top-heavy team right now. Pozuelo's back, so that might help, and he's looked good. You hope to get Soteldo back within the next couple of weeks and hope that he can stay fit. I think TFC fans, when they learned of Soteldo's injury, probably were looking at themselves and going, "Not again, not another glass doll kind of guy that can't stay fit." Because you've had that with Josie, you've had that with a number of other players. The season we've talked about the results so far this season. Injuries do play a factor into that because Osorio. I think we see. The game in Orlando, I thought they looked really good in large portions of that game, and a lot of that has to do with Jonathan Osorio. So when he's not available, it really hampers what they can do, particularly going forward.
Yeah, I wish I had the stat here, but it's a couple episodes old. Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but Soteldo missed like 3 games in his entire career to injury, like less than 3 games before he hit TFC, something ridiculous like that. Then he plays 2 games for TFC, not even starting, and he's out for the duration of the season. Listen, center back and an entirely new medical staff, and maybe we're a-okay. But yeah.
It has been a recurring theme, hasn't it? Over the last several years, it's been a recurring theme.
And once again, this is another great point. We have not been able to see them train under Armas, and you guys standing on the sidelines there with your expertise and your soccer IQ, you would be able to answer a whole lot of speculation by virtue of just being there for about 30 minutes. You know, like we could maybe put the question of why are they always getting injured in training to bed. We would probably not have to parrot out that tired old Michael Bradley. It was a 25 out of 10 that he said, like in passing one day, that we've now stamped into the training room as gospel. Yeah, Mitch, I don't want to jump on your question.
To be fair, before we move on from that, to be fair, before we move on from that point, even in the before times, before COVID, we would get 15 minutes at the start of the training for cameras to shoot B-roll, for us to see who was in and who was out of training. And that was where you would learn a lot of things, because you would go, okay, this guy's not out there, this guy's not out there, this guy's back, this guy's not out there, but he played the last game, so what's going on with him? So that's where you start to ask questions. Right now, we're just asking questions sort of blindly. Well, who's available, who's not? You know, this guy wasn't available for the last game. What's his injury status? Which Armas doesn't like those questions. He's made that very clear. He's been more open with it recently, but frankly, from the start, he made it very clear that he didn't want to tip his hand as to who might be available and who might not, which I can understand. Absolutely. You don't want to tell the other coach, this guy won't be playing, so you don't have to game plan for him. Right. But the reality is, professional sports now, the injury reports come out before the game, and it does in MLS too. And that's sometimes where we go, oh, well, this guy, we didn't know that, you know, the Soteldo situation. We didn't know that he wasn't going to play. And then you spot it on the injury report, and you go, what's going on? And then people start to think, not necessarily that the club's hiding something, but why was it cloak and dagger with this? Why are we discovering this the night before the game? So that's how we would get intel. We would not actually be able to watch them train. We would be able to watch them warm up, but they would not.
They never did much in those first 15 minutes.
Yeah, they weren't doing rondelles and all that fun content that we get on. Like
karaoke's and, you know, fun little games. There was a lot of laughing.
See, I was under the impression that it was like a dog and pony show for those 15-20 minutes, and you got to see them all walk out, and you could, you know, take their calipers and measure hamstrings and mass index. Well, thanks for ruining everything, Mike. That's another thing.
But they didn't want anyone taking pictures or video, posting it online, and having that tactical intel get into the hands of the opposition.
If they're doing rondelles, I mean, so what is the B-roll that they shoot at the beginning? Just like candid shots of people in golf carts and stuff like that?
It's warm up. It's just warming up. A lot of stretching.
Because that's not the most exciting B-roll ever.
No, it's not. But you know, you might get the odd guy. You get a couple of guys kicking the ball around back and forth. You sometimes do see who's training with the group and who is training separately. So we would see that. We would see Josie and Osorio, just hypothetical, training separately on their own, and that sort of might be an indicator that they weren't in full training with the entire group.
Gotcha.
Let's finish off this, Michael. Big week for Toronto FC. Obviously, Nashville tomorrow night, and then Cincy on Saturday. What do they need from this? I know in that press conference, Omar Gonzalez called this game against Nashville almost like a cup final because of how big it is for Toronto FC in terms of picking up 3 points. That's never what you want to hear 9 games into a season. What do they need from these 2 games?
Minimum 4 points. They need at least a draw out of Nashville. They can't allow Nashville to get further ahead of them. A win would obviously be preferable. You have to beat Cincinnati. There's no 2 ways about that. You have to beat Cincinnati. But yeah, they've got to get at least a draw out of Nashville. Because if they lose to Nashville, then, as I said before, they move that much farther up the road, and all of a sudden that playoff pack, depending on other results, obviously, that playoff pack starts to move further and further and further away from you. And then all of a sudden, what is a bit of a hill to climb to get to a playoff place becomes a mountain. And it starts, and frankly, you can start to see it maybe a little bit so far, is that the poor results are snowballing a little bit on them.
Yep.
You can't have that. You've got to get some results out of these two games, because after these two games, you're at 10 games, you're almost a third of the way through the season. If you get too far behind, there's no way back.
Yeah, and you don't control your destiny anymore. Like, you're waiting for other teams to drop results, and that's the way to.
They're already in that position. I mean, it's early.
I know.
They're already in that position where they need help.
Yeah.
2018. That's what I was gonna say. 2018.
It kind of has that feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Times, they'll get there eventually, but eventually they have to actually start putting up results. So, like you said, big week ahead for Toronto FC. But thank you so much for joining us, Michael. It's been great.
Always good to see you, Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Talk soon, man.
Yeah,
that was fun.
No, absolutely. Love having Michael on. He's always willing to share his opinions, and we got some great stuff from him there. And we got to disprove. I don't know what you thought they were doing in the first 15 minutes of training that they let cameras see, but
magic. I thought it was like a review where they just brought everybody out. I don't know.
The best you're getting is a crossbar challenge, maybe, and that's lucky.
What is a crossbar challenge? Sounds fun. No, I have no idea. What is you hang off the crossbar? You do pull-ups or
no? That would be incredible though. No, it's just trying to hit the crossbar with the ball.
Oh, okay. That seems like a good use of everybody's training time.
Oh, Josie's great at it. Games.
Speaking of Josmer, I didn't get to ask Mike this, and I'll ask you: are we ever going to see him in a TFC kit again?
No, I don't think so. I think if a resolution had happened, it would have happened by now.
Mike is actually shaking his head for our benefit. He's like, he's doing it again. do you think this gets resolved in the season, or do you think Josie is just training by himself for the rest of this campaign?
I can't, again, if you're Josie Altidore, you're not going to let. Like you said, you're not going to let them off the hook in terms of your salary or whatever. But I mean, you have to think a guy is competitive and a guy who still has a lot of ability like Josie Altidore has got to be pushing for some sort of move to prove himself. This is a World Cup year. Let's not forget. In terms of qualifying, you've got a Gold Cup this summer. If you're Josie Altidore, you just want to play so you can prove yourself and so you can prove, quite frankly, Toronto FC wrong as well. So,
well, that's the pissing contest right now, right? They're saying, well, if you can leave, you can check out anytime you want, buddy, but we're going to give you the early checkout discount on accounts receivable. And he's saying, no, I want my money. I saw an interesting tweet, which was, this guy is a club legend. TFC should just buy him out. I've always been of the mind that in a pandemic year, when you're hemorrhaging money from all your other revenue streams, doing that is a PR disaster. But we're in a PR disaster right now. So I'm not quite sure what the solution is. I mean, MLSE can afford to buy him out.
Yeah, but the fact that you'd save no salary cap is the main issue there.
But you save face. But you save face, and that's got to be worth something. I mean, in worth some calculus, right? Because this playing chicken with a club legend in order to get him out the door so you don't have to pay him what you owe him is a terrible look, right? I think we can agree on that. And there was a suggestion that I don't agree with at all, which was just play Josie and let the fans see how disinterested and non-committal he is, and then they'll all switch sides. There's truth in that. I think it's horrific, but there's truth in that. What do you think the conclusion is, right? Because somebody's going to end up having to be the bigger person, and why is it going to be Josie, right? He signed a contract. We knew it was a bad deal, but we owe him money. I mean,
I think it ends up being a loan deal to someone, be that over in Europe. I doubt it would be in MLS, but
So the kind of deal that they were not actively looking at for phase one of shopping him because it wasn't giving them the advantages that they want.
Toronto FC eats most of the salary. Like it's almost like a buyout, but there's no cap, issues.
Right,
so
right.
I think that's what we're looking at this point is the most sensible solution for both Josie Altidor's side and Toronto FC in the sense that they'd be able to bring in another designated player. Again, they'd be able to do that at the prorated salary, so it'd be cheaper for them anyway from a cap standpoint.
Sure.
Yeah, then a little bit they could save some goodwill on this if they can bring in someone to replace Josie Altidore.
Ivan's got a point. Like, I mean, I think the situation with Josie. Well, let me read it out for those at home. Does this situation with Josie play a decision in future DPs wanting to come here? Does it affect recruitment? I mean, does Soteldo coming wearing the 10 and then immediately getting injured and having like one of the worst debuts since Agarakeche affect player recruitment? Like, does Pozuelo being encouraged to like carry the team on his back affect recruitment? I don't think TFC should be looking for the top line European players anytime soon until we weather this storm, right? I don't know, Mitch. What do you think? What do you think is more damaging overall?
I don't know if it's the biggest damage thing because like for every Josie you've got, I know Sebastian Giovinco didn't end well, but he had an incredible time here and was able to reinvent himself. You've got the perfect example, which is Michael Bradley, who's still your captain, still an important part of this club. I know he wasn't a designated player, but he literally forewent his designated player contract because he wanted to keep building something here. And even like most of the time with Josie, like for the past couple of years, it's been really good. So I think as much as it's not the greatest at the ending, like, I mean, soccer players understand that in general. Like there's always going to be some kind of exodus. And I know I do feel like, especially here in North America, we kind of have a more of a different
You're absolutely
look on
right.
because
we expect our players to stay here forever. And that's just not how it works in football, soccer. But I kind of lost my train of thought. Listen. This is we now have two examples, right? We thought every TAM player would be Victor Vasquez, and it's not ever happening. He was a DP in TAM clothing, and we think every one of our superstars is going to pull a Michael Bradley, and they're not, right? Yeah. They're both outliers. So we have these gold standards that are almost, so far of an exception to the rule as to be mutually exclusive from the expectation. So, it puts us in a unique position, but, it really is. Mitch, you're a player. All right. You have a finite career and TFC, the reason we get these guys, the reasons we got Seba, the reasons we got Bradley, the reason we got Soteldo, the reasons we got maybe not Victor, but is that we were willing to overpay a little bit, right?
Sure, that's part of it.
So I think that trumps any bad juju, with the club and team. But be aware we're hiring assassins. We're not hiring the Bradleys of the world to come in and be a part of the wonderful mosaic that is Toronto and TFC, right? And I don't think we need a Bradley anymore. I think we got our Bradley right now. I think we could be fine with hiring assassins. Why not? As long as if the goal is winning and we're spending the money right, why not?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it's the worst thing to bring in players like Soteldo who like probably do want to leave in a couple of years. Like I think
do you think Pozuelo's going to re-up with us? I don't. I never did. I thought it was a one and done contract, and then he moves on to his next big paycheck, right? And that's not a knock on Pozuelo. But, he's not Michael Bradley. And I think Josie is a lot closer to Michael Bradley than Pozuelo. And that's why I get really upset. Like, does this sour Josie as Mr. Toronto, right? Like, is this a lot closer to a Vince Carter situation where it's going to take about 10 years for everyone to get over themselves, and then finally we can start talking about each other again.
Yeah, well, I'd also say like Michael Bradley's not just unique like from a Toronto FC perspective. He's unique in the football. In soccer, like what's the shelf life on a designated player? Like it's got to be pretty short. Like even for the best, like you've got like Lodero, in Seattle, there's just a handful of examples who have been like that successful, right? So Toronto FC's had some really good ones, and I think part of that is they again brought in really good players, but also it's a great place to live. There's great fans. Like there's all sorts of different aspects that make people want to stay in Toronto FC. Like we know Sebastian Giovinco wanted to stay. It wasn't it wasn't like that was an ugly exit from that standpoint. So I don't think to wrap this up kind of, I don't think this is going to hurt their recruitment as much as it might seem, because
listen, it's not great. It's not great. It's not going to help their recruitment.
No.
But is it really going to trump a guaranteed paycheck at a competitive team? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But it does change the class. Listen, once we won our first championship, we stopped being a project and started being something like a sustained, like the whole thing changed. So, a player like Michael Bradley that wanted to step in and become the soul of a team, we don't need that anymore. We've got him, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, as long as we're okay with the fact that we're now hiring, for the most part, assassins, which I think is fine, we should be good. But it runs so counter to the North American ideology, which is, like, let's land Tavares and he's going to retire here and he's going, he'll be a Maple Leaf forever. That kind of stuff. So
I don't think we're going to get any players coming in who have been pictured wearing Toronto FC pajamas. I don't think that's going to happen. At least not in the designated player role.
Well, yeah, I mean, we gotta win as many as Seattle before we're even in that conversation. Right. Yeah.
Let's finish up this week, I think, on a more positive note. Let's talk a bit of Canada, because obviously off to the octagonal for the first time since the 1998 World Cup qualifying cycle. Beat Haiti 4-0 on aggregate, a game that everyone was super worried about, but Canada dealt with very, very well, I thought. Now the real tests await, let's be honest. Joined by Panama, Honduras, Jamaica, United States, Mexico, El Salvador, and Costa Rica in the octagonal round. And, as much as they were able to get that result away in Haiti, again, that's what it's going to come down to. That's the opportunity you have yourself now to prove finally that you are a Canadian team willing and capable to put in the work to win away in CONCACAF, which is ultimately what's going to make the difference for this team now and down the years. But yeah, I think we go into this optimistic because this team's given us no real reason to think otherwise.
And so many little details that I love. I mean, we already talked about this, but the fact that Fonzie is willing to be a target for hacks and slashes and studs out tackles is not, I'm not going to say unexpected, because, he's so amazing, but wow, I love that so much. If this team's willing to take turns being the target that gets triple marked, we're amazing. And I also love that it's become a committee, victory by committee. Obviously Fonzie's the first name on the list, but very close behind is J Dave, and then you've got Laren and they're it's a very team mentality, a team first mentality, which I really, really, really like. And I also think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that the soccer gods seem to be on our side.
Yeah.
And, we're getting advantages competitively left, right, and center, and this is fantastic. It's almost like when TFC had the first spot in the allocation order just because for like 6 years, and we just kept selling it, and then it would get given back to us, and then we would just sell it. We had all this gam for absolutely no reason. If no one here knows what I'm talking about, Mexico has been sanctioned by is it FIFA or CONCACAF? I think it's FIFA,
so, yeah.
Pure FIFA.
Yeah,
CONCACAF did
rightly
nothing.
so, yes.
And they're not going to have fans for the first 3 home games as a consequence of just refusing to get rid of that insanely stupid homophobic chant. They're pretty proud of that chant for whatever stupid reason. They consider it a mark of their own, for better or worse. But I don't think this will be the last sanctions they receive. So we may be able to ride this staunch refusal to not give up that chant right into World Cup. So, any advantage at this point.
Yeah, and that would certainly be one of the tougher, at least in terms of opponents, away dates. Obviously, I think we all have San Pedro Sula circled as the game that will be the real test for this national team, just because of history and also just the incredibly wild atmosphere at that stadium. No one does it quite like that, but that is a good point. Canada's had all kinds of breaks for them, even in terms of not playing in front of fans. Obviously, it doesn't help that they haven't been playing in front of Canadian fans either, but it's been reasonably comfortable for them so far. But again, I think you touched on that as well. The commitment that we've seen from this group has been something that we haven't seen in my entire time watching the national team, where like Alfonso and Jonathan David are willing to fly out for games against teams like Bermuda and everything. That goes to them, but that's also a credit to the coach and to John Herdman for really bringing these guys into a vision and showing them, okay, here's why you have to play in these games so that you can get to the games that you actually want to play in, and these games that will actually help your career and that sort of thing. So that's what these first two rounds were about, and he was able to get that commitment. They were able to get the performance, and now they're getting their reward, which is again a number of great tests, and that's exactly what we want to see from a national team.
Absolutely. No complaints. I mean, if anything, we're overthinking the Octo. I wanted to call it the Ocho, and I refuse. So I think we're overthinking it. Which is a good thing. I think maybe we overthought the Suriname and Haiti games because of the quality on display at this team. Mm-hmm. But I would rather us be really scared than waltz in full of swagger. I think the time for full of swagger is coming quick, when we're gonna walk around with our heads held high. But not yet. Not yet. Let's get some more pelts first. Let's get a U.S. skull and a Mexico skull and go to San Pedro Sula and erase that history, and then we can start walking around with the swagger that this team deserves.
Yeah, and they do have the Gold Cup coming up next month as well, which will be very interesting in terms of who they pick for that, what John Herdman decides to do in terms of building up this continued momentum for the national team. Maybe if he wants to take a look at a couple of those other guys who are on the periphery, maybe see if he can get Daniel Jebison or Marcelo Flores to pull on a Canadian shirt. Wouldn't mind that either. Or Ayo Akinola, not to mention him as well. Of course, he was on the Canadian provisional roster, not on the United States provisional roster. We've seen Canada Soccer tweet out a bunch about Ayo Akinola all of a sudden too. So we're not going to finalize that yet, but it does seem close. But there's going to be a lot of Canadian soccer coming up over the next couple of years, and that alone I'm just so excited for. Like, these are big games. These games matter. They're against good opponents. This is everything we've been waiting for since Canada started getting good.
Exactly. So exciting. I mean, I don't know how much more to say about that. Like, these games are coming and they're going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And games coming up for Toronto FC as well, as we mentioned. They've got Nashville on Wednesday. It's going to be a tough test. Nashville, pretty decent defensively, not so great offensively. And then Cincy on Saturday is not good at either. So hopefully a week where Toronto FC can finally start to pick up some serious points and get things back together. But that's it for us this week. Thanks again to Michael Leach of 680 News for joining the show, to Kevin, Sophia, and Edwin for all the work they do in the background over at Homestand Sports. And of course, thanks to all of you for interacting and commenting. The comment sections were great today, as always. Looking forward, I think, to a busy week for Toronto FC. We'll see if we're looking forward to it once the games come. But
go Scotland. It's in 40 minutes. So let's go. Let's go Scotland. Maybe England can win too. We'll see. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.